Okay. Is that better?
All right.
There you
We are live in two places
go.
and we're not echoing, I don't think. Okay. So, welcome to Friday Focus, everyone. We are doing a special edition. I occasionally have guests, and I'm delighted to welcome Sadie Prestige to the call, who owns her own VA agency, and she calls herself an executive VA, and her VAs are executive VAs, which is intriguing to me. And we're going to talk about that. But I want to say that I don't know what I want to say. It just went out the window. Good morning, America. Yes, we are live. And for those of you on Instagram, you can chime in here. Those of you on LinkedIn or the Facebook groups, I can see your comments if you're using StreamYard. So please feel free to comment. Oh, I know what I was going to say, Sadie. Your last name, Prestridge, I keep on wanting to say Prestige, which is kind of cool, really, because you run a prestigious type of VA agency.
Exactly.
So I like that. That's been tripping me up a little. Now, just if those of you listening are self-employed, you probably know what a VA is, a virtual assistant. But I also have a lot of audience members who are people looking for new careers. So maybe even being a VA or getting a VA would be interesting to them. So what is a VA? What does a virtual assistant do?
Yeah. So obviously there are tons of different VAs. There's tech VAs, support VAs, virtual assistants, executive virtual assistants. But to give you the basic definition, a virtual assistant is someone who's doing administrative tasks and they're supporting the CEO, like business coaches, web designers, service-based entrepreneurs with their business day to day.
Now, when you say, you run an agency of executive VAs, what's your distinction between a everyday VA and an executive VA?
Yeah, so a virtual assistant is typically task based and they're focused on a defined scope of work. So they're a give me a list, I'm going to go off and do that list, check all the boxes, tell you I'm done, and wait for more work. Whereas an executive assistant is higher level, they're forward focused, they're coming to you with the things that they should be doing to help move your business along. And they're still doing the day to day as well, but they're more of a right hand and they're seeing that business from a high level.
Great. I love that distinction. Now, for those of you who this sounds like an appealing idea, what does someone have to do to prepare their business so that they can invite someone in to work at that level with them? Because that is one of the breaking points in being self-employed is there's only so much you can do yourself. I always tell people you have to get help before you can afford help or you're never going to grow. And so, but in order to start letting go of those reins, how do we best prepare for bringing in somebody like you?
Yeah, so I would really recommend to start auditing your business, looking at the tasks that you're doing, pull up a Google Doc, track your time on Toggle, however you feel comfortable doing that, but start to really notice where you're spending your time and where it feels like it's taking up too much time. So are you in your inbox for 30 minutes to an hour every day? Let's get a VA in there to streamline that and take that off your plate. Are you spending a ton of time in your admin, onboarding clients, dealing with contracts and invoices? Like put that on your list. So you want to start going piece by piece in your business and seeing where things are being bottlenecked, where it's taking up too much of your time, where you're not feeling happy. Because as a CEO, you started your business, first of all, because you have a mission and you want to support your clients in a specific way. And then you realize, well, there's all this like admin stuff that I have to do that nobody told me about. And this is draining me. And now I can't go and get more clients or make more money or take a vacation or whatever that is because all of this like business stuff on the other side is taking up all of your time. And so that's where you start with that audit of what do I need, make that list, and then from there you need to start either making Loom videos of the processes for how you do things, or you need to create systems and SOPs, or at least start outlining that, right? Because especially if you're newer and you're going out and hiring a virtual assistant, they're probably newer too. So they're not going to be as strategic. They're not going to know, like, these are the things I can take off of your plate. They're going to go, well, what do you need?
Exactly.
Go, I don't know. What do I need?
Right.
And so
Oh,
Ernie
that's a circular conversation you don't
yeah,
want to have.
yeah,
And SOP, for those of you who don't know, the initial standard operating procedures, right? So having a list of your standard operating procedures. And And for those of you who are, working on your own and you get frustrated, you just want to throw the whole thing against the wall. That's where you're at this place. You're at this place where you're like, I'm doing too many things that have nothing to do with my zone of genius. That's when you know it's time to hire. And now, what is your advice for somebody who wants to hire a VA? Like, what do you've told us you need to prepare, how we need to prepare, but what's probably the best interview question we could ask?
Oh,
I know that came out of the blue. Sorry.
No, that's a really great question. So obviously I'm hiring because I have a VA agency. So I'm hiring VAs all of the time. The things that I look for when I'm when I'm asking questions would be like, what's your experience as a VA? Being able to ask that, they're going to be able to tell you like, oh, I've worked with business coaches, I've worked with or they're going to be like, oh, well, I'm brand new and like I'm doing some social media, right? Like we all need our social media done, but as an EVA, we're coming in and taking off like the onboarding, the client onboarding, the administrative, the email, the calendar, the CEO support. So you can weed them out really quickly if they're like, oh, I do social media management. And you're
right.
like, great, I don't need that right now. I need this higher level stuff taken off my plate. So that would be the first thing. And then another simple question is like, how do you onboard a client? Because you're going to be able to see like, have they done that before? And do they have their own proven processes? Because that shows you that they know how to set up a process.
Right. So, you'd be at a disadvantage if you have to teach your new VA everything that you do. If they have the experience of like, oh yeah, I took care of this person's social media, and yes, I do onboarding for this person. This is how I onboard, or I know how to do marketing funnels, or whatever it is that you're looking for. Then, your ability to grow is going to be accelerated based on how much that person knows. So that's really helpful. All right, let me turn the direction of our conversation a little bit, because something that fascinates me, and I know that a lot of my listeners are also people looking for new careers. I always I have a love-hate relationship with people's stories, right? It drives me crazy when it's like, oh yeah, one day I decided to do this and the next day I was a millionaire. Like, no, I want to know, how did it really happen? Like, so you were working at a corporate job when you decided to start your own VA, not a firm yet, but to being a virtual assistant. And within 3 months, you were able to quit your job. And then before you know it, you're like, hey, next step is for me to have other VAs working for me. So give us a little insight into, how did you do that? Because there's people who struggle for years and don't quit their corporate job.
Yeah. And just like you said, like it sounds sexy, right? Like, oh, she quit her job in 3 months. She like made a ton of money, right? But I worked my butt off. I worked my 8 to 5. I got up at 5 a.m. and from 5 to 7, I was working VA, like marketing and networking. When I got home, I was doing more VA work, growing my business, setting up my systems. So I did that for those 3 months in order to be able to quit my job. And I was doing all of the things, like I had niched. And then I spent all of 2019 niched into that EVA role, which allowed me to make even more money. So kind of like building up on the income there. And then in 2019, I got pregnant and I was like, okay, well, I can't keep supporting all of these amazing clients, taking maternity leave, like all of the things, right? And so my business coach at the time said, like, well, let's create a mini agency. We'll hire a VA. We'll have her take on the clients that you have right now. And then when you come back from your leave, you can decide what you want to do at that point. And so I got to kind of get a little taste of what it would look like to have an agency without having like the full blown doing the whole thing, by just hiring the one person and being able to train and support her and then take my maternity leave. And then of course, COVID and all of the things happened. So over that summer, clients started coming in and referrals were just like blowing up. And so we grew really quickly into 6 figures in our first year. So it's kind of almost like not falling into my lap. I had to do a lot of work for it, but
it took off. The momentum happened and you were prepared and you had systems, which is part of the message here. So let me ask you though, but because yes, you worked your butt off and you were doing double time, but, and I hope it's not too personal a question, but it's important for people to understand. Were you financially, like, you knew that you could take that leap after 3 months? It wasn't necessarily that your business was replacing your income yet, but you knew you could take the risk. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So my goal was to pay my mortgage. Like I'm married, my husband has a job, and so when we discussed it, he said you can quit your job if you can pay our mortgage. And so I was like, okay, cool, like I can do that. And so that's what the job quitting was for me. Like I could
you could cover that, so you knew you could leave. All right, great. I think that's really important for people to hear, because and also the power of partnership. I have so many independent women who are like, well, I've got to make this much, and that's all. And that even the men, they're like, this is what I have to do. And I'm like, I know that couples have their financial agreements, but this is a partnership. So there is a discussion that can be had outside of the rules that you've made for yourself, of like, how is this partnership going to support this change?
Yeah.
So I just think that's an important message for people to hear also. Yeah. So we've hit our time today, quick and dirty. But I do love having guests on. I hope you've gotten some value out of listening to our conversation about a VA, whether it's time for you to have one in your business, at which level, beginner level or executive VA level. And if you're thinking of making a change, here's another story of somebody who started a business. So thank you for being here, Sadie. I'm sure you and I will be talking again. And thanks to all our listeners. And this will be out there for everyone to hear. And we put it on YouTube later this week as well, Sadie. So
perfect. Yeah.
We'll
Thank
be out
you
there.
so much, Laura.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.